everyone. Welcome back to our series of financial planning videos for dental practice owners. And what I want to talk to you today about is the importance of having certain documents in place. They're called traditionally estate documents, but documents in place to not only make sure that you have continuity plan in place for your practice if God forbid something were to happen to you, either death or disability, incapacitation, to make sure the practice is secure, the asset is secure, but also to make sure that you have the right documents in place to take care of your personal situation. So I'm going to break this video down into talking about a set of personal documents you should have as well as business documents that you should have. So starting off with personal documents. Traditionally, many people will immediately think that I need to put a will in place. But actually, while you're living, the two most important documents you should have are what's called a durable power of attorney, which is essentially a document that is put in place where you designate someone that if you were to become incapacitated or unable to make financial decisions on your own, you're going to authorize that party to make those decisions on your behalf. Traditionally, that's a spouse, and you'd also want to put in some successors in there. They could be kids, a trusted relative, somebody that you believe would be able to make those decisions on your behalf. The second most important document you should have for your personal situation is an advanced healthcare directive, healthcare power of attorney, and making sure it has appropriate HIPAA language involved in that. Just like a durable power of attorney where you're authorizing somebody to make decisions on your behalf or manage your finances, this is a document put in place to express your medical wishes if something were to happen to you, to express who is going to be making medical decisions on your behalf if you are incapacitated, and also who is going to have access to your medical records if needed. So those are the two most important documents that you should have while you're alive. And the reason for that is because oftentimes we think estate documents traditionally involving death, but there are also a lot of situations where there's an incapacitation, if God forbid something were to happen. Those are the two most important documents you should have from an administrative standpoint. The third most important document is that will. And those are going to be a document that outlines the executor who is going to be the administrator of making sure all of your accounts or investments, your assets, your dental practice goes to the right place, goes to the right individuals, the right trust if there's one created. That's going to be the executor. And also, too, who are these assets being passed to and in what form? And oftentimes we think, a will is really in control of all of our assets or our accounts. But one of the second most important things in tangent with a will that you should review is beneficiary designations. Because believe it or not all accounts will ever end up going through your will if they're appropriately titled. So for example, retirement accounts, 401ks, life insurance. You want to go through and make sure that all of your beneficiary designations are in line with the wishes that you've outlined in your will. So for example, if you have a retirement account and you wish that to be passed to a spouse or your children, and in your will, you say you leave everything to me. Believe it or not, that retirement account is not going to go to me because your will says so. It's going to go to the beneficiary designations that you put in place, and that's how those things should be. The fourth document, and this is something that many of our clients will have, is revocable living trusts. And when you hear the word trust, you think of giving up control. But in reality, a revocable living trust is something that's put in place while you are alive. That you have the ability, as the trustee of that revocable trust, to move assets around, retitle assets, make investment decisions. You still have complete control. But by titling those assets in the revocable trust, you could put shares of an LLC in a revocable trust, you can have an investment account in a revocable trust. What you're essentially avoiding is upon passing probate. And whenever you want to hear the word probate, just think administrative duties. By avoiding probate, you avoid them. For clients that have assets in multiple states, revocable trusts are something that we like everybody to have because it brings ease to the administration if something were to happen to you. And lastly, one important thing to remember, I mentioned the word will, I mentioned the word revocable trust, and how those assets pass administratively. The most important thing is to get those documents in place. The second most important thing is to make sure all of your assets are titled appropriately. So for example, if you create a revocable trust, but none of your assets are titled there, there's a document called a pour-over will, which essentially is going to grab all those assets and put them into your revocable trust. If you have assets that are out of state, if you have assets that are not titled in that revocable trust, you're going to lose out that ability for ease of administration. So traditionally, when clients go to work with their estate planner to design all those documents, we're part of that process, guiding and advising, and then making sure that we have a full inventory of all of your assets and all of your accounts to make sure they're appropriately titled in that revocable trust if it's set up. And if not, that the assets are titled jointly or have the appropriate beneficiary designations on them. It's traditionally an overlooked step in the estate planning process. You have this great stack of documents, but then you go through and make sure all of your assets, specifically your dental practice, is titled in the right way. So the last piece I want to talk to you about is the documents you should have in place for your dental practice. So first, if you have partners, if there are any other co-owners in the practice, likely you already have a buy-sell agreement in place. And if you don't, you want to make sure that you go get one. That buy-sell agreement is essentially going to outline if something were to happen to one of the owners of the partners in terms of death, incapacitation, disability, anything like that, what happens to their shares. And it's also probably going to outline some valuation and funding methods to govern the practice. Now, if you're a solo owner and you're the only owner, it's unlikely you have a buy-sell agreement. But one of the most important documents you should have in place is a practice continuation plan. And this is really the case of whether or not you're a solo owner or you have partners. This practice continuation plan is really important because it is going to be the plan that is in place to make sure that if something happens to you as the individual, who's going to see your patients, where is the work going to come from? Because what you don't want to happen is it might be a temporary disability where you need to have a dentist come in from maybe another practice just to cover your practice, and you're going to compensate them for it. But having those arrangements in place in advance of anything happening is going to put you in a position to succeed from a risk management standpoint. If something were to happen to you, death, we see it in our own industry, a solo advisor has their book of business, they don't have that practice continuation plan in place. It's not only bad for your patients, but it's also bad for your family because odds are that practice is going to be worthless at the end of the day because all those patients are just going to find somebody new. So that practice continuation plan is really important to build relationships with the right practice owners around your area to ensure that if something were to happen to you, your patients will be taken care of and covered, and more importantly, your asset could be protected. The other documents that's really important, it's less of a document, more of a plan, is a business succession plan or a practice succession plan. And really that is going to outline if you have anybody internal that you have potentially identified as a potential successor to your practice, but you're not really sure if they're quite ready to move forward and take over the practice, having this succession plan in place and communicating it to that successor, the potential successor, is really important. Because if in the case of something were to ever happen, they know there's a document and a plan in place. It's hopefully going to outline some valuation metrics that if something happened to you in case of death, that your spouse or your family would be paid out based on a certain valuation. All of those documents are put in place to protect the asset that you have in your dental practice and also put in place to protect your family. So in summary, what we talked about today is the importance of making sure that you have certain estate and legal documents in place for both your personal situation and the practice. Personally, making sure that you have your advanced healthcare directive and medical power of attorneys updated and reviewed, your durable power of attorney, as well as any wills, pour-over wills, or revocable trusts, and making sure you do a full review of all of your investment accounts, bank accounts, assets, to make sure that they have the appropriate titling to make sure that they're in line with your estate documents. From the business perspective, making sure that if you have partners, you have the appropriate and updated buy-sell agreement or operating agreement. And whether or not you're a solo individual or have a practice with partners, is have a practice continuation plan as well as a business succession plan in place. If you have all of those documents covered, you're going to make sure that you're taking all the right steps and making sure you're protecting your assets as well as protecting your family in any of the administration if something could happen to you. Thank you so much for listening today. Down below in the description of the video, I'm just going to put a helpful checklist that's going to outline all the documents that I mentioned today in this video. If you're interested in having a free initial consultation, make sure you head over to our website. You could schedule a quick 15-minute phone call and speak with one of our advisors. You could also, if you're enjoying these videos, make sure that you go down and hit that subscribe button, and you'll get notified if any new videos get posted. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.